Welcome to the Rocky Road Podcast, brought to you by Rockbusters, with your host, Dennis Wager. Dennis is a best-selling author and an expert in demolition, rock, and concrete breaking, as well as a professional blaster. He is also president of Rockbusters Incorporated, along with his son, Brian. On the podcast, you'll hear exciting stories of how these challenge types of rock and concrete jobs are done. You learn about the uses of expanding grout and explosive devices. But furthermore, you'll hear about some of the hurdles and struggles entrepreneurs and business owners have had along the way, how they got started, and how they broke through the obstacles and found the path to success. Along with that, some insight for young people and people wanting to get into the industry. So listen in. I hope you enjoy the show. Now, here's Dennis Wager.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Just want to welcome to the show today, Sam Visona from T&A Rockworks. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
How are things going today?
Pretty good. Busy as usual. Can't complain.
Yeah. I understand you guys have a lot of work going on. You're quite busy up in Kelowna.
Yeah. We've got a lot of larger residential projects on the go. Quarries, stabilization, things like that. As soon as the weather improves, we'll get more into shoring. But yeah, for this time of year, it's been pretty good.
Good. Yeah, and then maybe just give us a little bit about your background and stuff, and how you got to where you are, how you got started in this career of blowing things up.
Sure. Yeah, I was I was born and raised on Vancouver Island. I moved to Kelowna, and I've been here for about 9 years now. I come from a logging family, so both my grandfathers were loggers, equipment operators, fallers. My dad was a faller. So at a young age, I was exposed to heavy equipment, working with my hands, kind of the heavier industries. And so I took a liking to it, and I took an appreciation to it as well. And, that kind of laid a foundation for where I got to now. So I ended up moving to Kelowna, entered the business administration program. And in between school years, I'd go up to Grand Prairie, where my buddies worked. And, I got some experience pipe fitting in the oil field. And then I worked 2 summer breaks for Ritchie Brothers Auctioneers, where I got exposed to a wide variety of heavy equipment. And, although you're not, operating it for work's sake, I got quite comfortable operating anything, hopping into it, troubleshooting it, working with heavy duty mechanics. So that actually helped me quite a bit. And then my final summer break, I actually applied at T&A. I applied probably 6 times. I really wanted to be here. And finally I got a call, and Mike hired me on as a laborer. And then, I've been here ever since. So, I basically took a liking to the urban blasting because I had some limited exposure to logging road blasting, which interested me. And then I figured, well, you know what, this industry has a pretty good outlook considering we're going higher up into the mountains. And my goal was to get my blasting tickets, and I got my WorkSafe first class ticket and my Ministry of Mines urban ticket. Learned how to drill. Got into the stabilization and shoring end as well. So I basically got involved with everything to do with rock work here. So it's been pretty awesome.
Cool. So it's like after 6 times of applying, it's like, okay, quit bugging us. Here's some coveralls. Put your boots on.
Pretty much. Yeah. I just told Mike I really want to be here.
Whether you want me to or not, I want to be here.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That's really cool because, we've started Rockbusters now recently. And my son Brian's a partner in the company, so he's kind of along the same lines. Like he was a crane operator. He started off just laboring, packing drywall as a swamper, and then years ago when he was really beginning, he's just turned 30 now. But in the beginning, it was a swamper packing drywall, and then he got his license, so he was able to drive a 5-ton, and then they put him through driving school and got his class 3 and then his class 1. And then they put him through some training and got his crane ticket. So then he was able to drive the tri-drive with the crane and go deliver drywall and do crane jobs. And kind of like you, I've always been into excavating. And Brian, when he was 2, I would take him to work. I'd work some, night shifts on kind of remote sites. So he'd be in his car seat between my feet there on the excavator, and he'd be coming to work, and he kind of grew up around that too. So now he's out there excavating. We did a little demo job out in Mission, and he really enjoys that part of it. So.
Oh yeah, it's great. To lay a foundation like that, it gives people a huge advantage, especially when you're young.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So then what would a typical phone call be like for TNA on a from a customer on a daily basis?
So myself, I mean, my position in the company, I mean, I'm one of the owners and I'm also the operations manager. So my phone rings off the hook all day. I get a variety of calls, whether it's from, the crew. It could be, larger residential blasting projects, smaller basement projects. Some of these trickier ones, like we've talked about, where we use expanding grout, hammer job, crushing, anchoring, meshing, shoring, you name it, man. It comes in on a daily
Yeah.
basis, which is awesome. And the great part about it is that Mike has really grown this business into something great. So we have a lot of very loyal customers, and they know when there's a tricky job. They phone us right away. What's the price? When can you get here? How are we going to do it? And then we go to work, right? So there's a lot of that, a lot of repeat customers that are phoning, daily, weekly, whatever it is. So
That's
yeah,
nice.
pretty busy.
How many guys does TNA have?
Yeah. We, including office staff, we fluctuate between 30 and 40.
Okay, so that's a good size.
Yeah.
Cool. So then, how would you decide, or who would decide how to go about each of these jobs? Like, I mean, I know you just recently bought a big excavator with a large hammer on it, right?
Yeah. So that's a great part of what we do is, we're a full service rockwork company. So we'll come drill, blast, scale, bolt, mesh, hammer, crush, shore, whatever you need to do. So, we use a variety of tactics when it comes to close proximity projects. I mean, obviously, trying to control your charge weight is a big deal, and ensuring that you stay within the allowable limits in terms of ground vibration. Because, of course, you need to be a responsible contractor, right? And, unless, especially in today's age. I mean, in the past, it was a bit of the Wild West, but nowadays, regulations have tightened up, which is awesome. So if we can't blast in this scenario, we're going to figure out, okay, how can we do it? And most likely that leads to either rock hammering or hand drilling and applying expanding grout. So there's a lot of times now, especially in the past couple of years, where we're blasting up to a certain setback point, and then we'll apply expanding grout and hammer the remaining rock out as we encroach, closer to properties or sensitive structures. So that's the beauty of it, is that we have all these tools to kind of make sure that we can do the job in the most efficient way, but also the safest way. So it's pretty
cool. Have you done much with black gold, in particular with the larger holes and the wider spacings?
Yeah, I've had some pretty good success, especially last summer. I know I mentioned this one to you. I did a full basement. This is the first time I've done a full basement down in Penticton, very, very hard rock. So we ended up drilling a 3-inch hole in a 4x4 pattern. And I believe we put in, I think it was 4 pallets in total. And we basically, what happened was it worked out pretty good because we applied the first half and I gave it basically a day to break out and create some relief for the deeper half. And the deeper half was anywhere from 15 to 20 feet in depth. And so we applied the second half, and then it actually rained. So essentially it gave it another kick, rehydrated it just like, concrete. And it really came out. And of course, we didn't do the excavation after that. It was another contractor, but I kept close tabs on what was going on. And basically for him to come in there with a rock hammer and a bucket and haul it away was about 5 days of work, which is pretty quick, right? Considering that type of rock. So that, and we could roll in there, we didn't have to get a permit. We didn't have to pre-blast survey. We didn't have to haul blast mats. Didn't have to haul explosives all the way over there. We just get the drill there, drill it in 1 day, leave, and it was basically a 2-day, 3-day process to apply the grout, and then we were done.
Any idea how many meters
more and more
come up out of there?
Oh, I'm not sure. It was really fluctuating, especially down at the bottom. But I think what was the lot? I think we were 40 feet wide at the back, and probably about 60 to the front. And like I said, it varied anywhere from, it was daylighted out in some areas, but all the way to 20 feet.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty good. Yeah. One of the things that we've learned too is a lot of times we'll tarp overnight and then we'll put a heater in there. We've done it with different sizes of heaters based on the space that you're trying to heat up, right? But that makes a big difference. And a lot of times, like you just said, like it does help if it gets wet again. Like sometimes we'll kind of not tarp it or not cover it and it'll rain, and that does help. But then it's really in the process of drying it out. That's where the heat, like if you put in like a frost fighter, like a big diesel heater, that's made a huge difference. You come in the morning and it's all toasty warm and all cracked, and you can just pull it out. But what I'm finding is a lot of guys are
Definitely.
just loving the fact that they can just drill a regular blast pattern, and instead of loading it, they just pour grout and go home.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially on these bigger job sites where we already have a bigger hole drill sitting there, and we don't have to, don't have to haul in the commando and don't have to drill way more holes, spread the pattern, bigger hole, just the same principles as blasting, right? And it's catching on pretty quick.
Yeah, that's great. That's what I want to see too, and it's just kind of more of that, because it is a unique product, and it's just really getting the awareness out there, so more guys kind of have it in mind, right? Because it really saves you. Like, we've got charts here to figure out the cost between the Next Pro and the Black Gold, and it's really like about a quarter to a third of the amount of grout that you use when you go with those bigger holes and the wide spacings. And I've always found that's quite substantial. Like, we get into sometimes where, we'll cost out like a house excavation, and, with the 1.5 holes a foot apart, it's just like too expensive in grout. So a lot of times people just don't go ahead and do it at all.
Yeah, that happens too, right? I mean, but that happens with, blasting, grouting, hammering, you name it. Doesn't matter if in their mind, if the budget
doesn't work,
is appropriate.
But I think those times are changing too now. I mean, that was kind of more like a few years ago. Now, like, the real estate is so expensive that what we do really isn't that much of the cost anymore, is it? It's kind of a smaller portion.
Yeah, it's not. I mean that feeds into another topic in communication, right? A lot of people, they don't, like I said, they have a budget in mind, and you come way outside that budget, and they don't understand why. Well, it's up to you to describe to them why. Why is it so expensive?
Yeah.
Right? If you give them a basic breakdown of even some of the costs that we incur, all the overhead in dealing with some of these projects, all the risk that we take on, and rock is falling, rock is being blasted, vibration related issues, stakeholder issues. Once you explain to people and put it in writing and give them a clear map of what's going on, I feel like we've managed to convince a number of people that were very skeptical, and then once the work's done, they're very happy.
Yeah.
Now they understand.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, we had the same thing in Whistler. We did a job up there in the summer, and basically they had blasted out the bulk area to build the house, which after they had the house built, they decided to build like an extra carriage house. But somebody had drilled and poured grout like the year before when they finished the blasting, and then they just walked away and left it. They thought, oh, it didn't work, so they left it. And then they built the house, which was only a few feet away, from this then now 25 or 30 foot face, which was all cracked and hanging there. So they're like, well, can you just come in and take that out? But they don't really, well, they see the risk of the rock falling, but they don't really want to, take on the risk. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're left with how do you take it apart? And a lot of times it's really, like in that case, we drilled and grouted. And even some of the stuff that was already loose to begin with, a lot of it we just did, with scaling bars. And it's really just how do you control each piece? Like, it's assessing like, okay, that rock's like 2 feet by 2 feet. It should weigh this much, and it should fall like this. And you just kind of, it's like taking apart a jigsaw puzzle, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it also depends on the rock type too, right? I mean, in the Whistler area, you got very, very hard, competent rock there, right? A lot of it's probably blockier. Around here, we have such a wide variety that it really changes from job to job, because we bounce around. I mean, all the way from, Vernon down to a Soyuz, and the rock changes rapidly, right? So that's another challenge. But again, if you tell the customer, the kind of worst case, best case, high price, low price, you can usually make it work. Right?
Yeah, I know, exactly. No, I think that's great. And I think what I find interesting too is that now you have the different tools, so you can do different things, and you could mix them up, or, do a combination of, right? So if you're doing a bigger job, you could do, high explosives in, the middle or one area, and then you could switch over to do more precise work in another area where you have some.
Yeah, I actually I just finished up a quote this morning for a job up in Peachland, and the municipality there put in some stipulations about blasting. They're not overly fond of blasting, and I get it. In a bit of an older neighborhood, and so we're going to blast some of the further away cuts hammer some of the trenching, but then they put in a storm detention tank, and it's, you know, a better part of a 5 meter cut, and it's right adjacent to a house, but there's no blasting. So I put in there, well, black gold, and then we'll hammer it out. That's the only way to do it. And if you compare the price, because I broke it down between doing commando holes and basically double and triple decking it and taking it 2 lifts, it was very marginally more to use the grout and the hammer than to blast it. And I just explained it to him, like, look, if we blast this, let's say we were hypothetically allowed to, the issues that are going to be created with that property owner and his neighbors is going to far outweigh if we just do the grout or use the grout and use the hammer and get it done. Right. So
is that before you take into consideration the pre-blast surveys, or are those included, or in that cost factor?
Yeah, so the pre-blast survey, I don't even include it in per cubic meter price. That's a separate item altogether. I don't blend that in. But I was going to survey his house regardless, because he is within range, just on the cusp of where we were going to blast to. So we're covering all our bases and giving people options.
Yeah, because here what we notice is that you know, you get into really dense areas where sometimes you'll be surveying 10 or 15 or 20 houses. And then that cost itself, you know, combined with all the rest of the stuff, the transportation of the explosives and the mats, those are kind of like a cost in itself, right? And then
definitely. That's how I group that. Yeah, I group the mobilization and the pre-blast surveys and some of the other minor items into one lump sum. And I just tell them this is how many we need to do. And then obviously the pre-blast surveys are determined basically in line with home inspections and square footage. And then I might even add some more inspections depending on the area. You know, since we've worked in all the areas in Kelowna and in the valley, basically, I know where there's problematic areas. So we might add a couple more just to make sure that we're covered and give, you know, some of the neighboring property owners some peace of mind as well.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's really cool now that we're finally in a place where the cost of grouting is similar to the cost of blasting. You know, even if it's slightly different either way, just the fact that we're in the range of them being close is pretty exciting. Because I think you're right. That's exactly what I've always felt, is that blasting, in my opinion, blasting is always the go-to. It's the first thing on people's minds. It's like, oh, I got a rock, I got a blast. You know, like face it, blasting's been a thing since the 1800s, right? So it's, you know, something that comes to mind quickly, but then people start to realize, you know, it's not as easy as they thought. You know, there's more involved, it's more restricted, there's more regulations. Those regulations are getting tighter all the time. And what is really my best way to do it? Like, is it blasting or is it not? Is it something else?
Yeah, and I think you know, you and I have talked about this before, but going forward, I think, you know, more and more people, they don't want to see blasting in close proximity, and fair enough. I understand it, not from necessarily the alleged damage perspective, but I understand it from just overall disturbance. Yeah. You know, we come in there, you get the drill in there, it's loud, it's dusty in there, right? Yeah. You can't always collect all the dust. And then you come in there and you start shaking the ground a bit, and you know, people don't like that, especially when, you know, they live in areas that haven't really experienced much development, and now they are in a large way. You know, I can understand it, and I mean that's up to the blasting contractor to kind of mitigate those risks and you know, put in some time and some effort in dealing with these property owners, because again, you're in their neighborhood, right?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it is the stigma that comes along with it. It's like you rattled my china cage with my china cabinet with my grandmother's, you know, ancient china there, you know, you cracked my foundation, even though they had the crack, you know, from a decade before.
Yeah.
But with the grout and even with the hydraulic splitters and stuff too, they don't even know. They hear the drill, but they don't really even know most of the time what you're doing, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
I think here with the blasting, what the biggest thing is that, you know, you need to notify the neighbors. You need to, you know, when you take out your permits and things like that, so they know what you're doing and when you're doing it. And then you have the 2-minute warnings going off, so they know, okay, here's a shot coming up, and it just kind of puts them on edge, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for all the, you know, neighboring property owners that are very concerned, there's a lot of them that are very understanding, right? Mm-hmm. You're in neighborhoods where there is a lot of tradesmen, there's a lot of miners, there's a lot of people that, you know, they may not necessarily understand it, but they accept it and they know it needs to be done. So a lot of those people, they might phone you and ask you a few questions. And if you just spend, even 10, 15 minutes with them on the phone, that might be good enough for them. They might say, okay, you answer my questions, you answer them, up to a standard that I have. And, okay, let's move on, go do your work. Right. And which is great. There's always a couple that, you got to kind of, work at, and over time, they're not really happy with you, but that's the nature of the work.
Yeah,
right?
It is. Yeah, totally. I think things are changing, like you say, and I think it's going in a good direction, now with these other options of how to do it. I think that's really beneficial. Have you had much experience with Royex or any of the 1.4 products, the depth-graded cartridges?
Not really. We had some of those cartridges from GeoBreak years ago, but we just haven't had a place to really use them. Like, I don't have a volume of work where we really need to use them, because either the rock hammer's on site, or we'll just pop them because we're going to blast anyway on site. So for the most part, when we're dealing with oversized or boulders on a site, they'll usually put them in a corner for us, and we usually always have blast mats there or something there. So I haven't had a whole lot of requests for, or situations where I really needed to use it. But that's not saying that I won't in the future, right?
Yeah. Now, we also are the distributor for Royex in North America, and we've used it a lot. But with the new regulations from WCB, with them kind of deeming low explosives the same as high explosives, I think it really kind of lost its advantage there, because the cost of the cartridges are more expensive. Sure, there's the benefits, with the lower vibrations and stuff like that. And I see a good application in mining because of the not having the noxious gases and stuff. So you can use it underground. And we have had good success with New Gold. They've used it underground. We did some tunneling for them there, and they've approved it now to be used during shift, which for them was a big deal because they can typically only blast between shifts.
Right.
So if they're doing any kind of construction work underground, or if they're doing anything gets missed, they can go back at any time and use it and clean things up. But I see it kind of coming down now to being like a splitters or grout or blast, or the hammer. The hammer is, kind of always one of those things that's always been there too, right? It's kind of the same as blasting.
Yeah.
And it's funny. What I really like about my job and what I do is I get to work with different people in different places. We had one contractor in Kentucky that was digging a hole for an apartment, and they excavated whatever it was, 10 feet of dirt, and then they got into rock, and then they were able to bring in, I think it was like a 300 with a hammer, and they hammered out like another 10 feet of rock, and then it just got to be too hard where the hammer just wasn't effective. And then it was the phone call, like, okay, now what do we do, right? And
well, that's exactly it. Yeah, what do we do now? And to add on to that point, that's what I do now with when I know we got a rock hammer job and it's a deep cut. Is if contractors, if they don't want to pay for the grout, I just tell them, if we do hit something subsurface that none of us can predict, we're gonna have to use it. So I find like that's been a really good way to kind of generate some work on expanding grout end, is just tell them, like, if it goes this way, we're going to have to use it, right?
Yeah, exactly. We did one in North Van, and it was the same thing. They did a 60-foot cut, and they had a 490 Komatsu with, I think it was a 15,000-pound hammer. And the rock is the same story. They got out, a lot of the rock, but then after a certain depth, it just got so hard that they were saying you could actually see the point on the breaker just heat up to be so hot that it just kind of melted. And they were going through, I think they went through 3 or 4 points on that one job. Was like whatever they were, $4,000 or $5,000 a piece. So then it's like, okay, this isn't working so good. Like, what's the plan B now?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one where you really rely on your operator to say, like, okay, is that thing getting hot? Are you just generating dust? Like, where are we at here? Right?
Yeah.
And to stop that quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what it is too now, there's so much out there, like, the different size of machines, different size of breakers, or different size of, the everything, right? So it's like, how do you figure it all out? And how do you figure it out quicker so that you're not, stuck or facing a problem and having to think of a plan B. So if you have it all up front, you know, like you were saying, you tell people now, like, hey, if this gets hard, then this is what we're doing. But at least they know up front what it costs. They know, like, it's already in motion. Like if you get stuck, you're not really stuck. It's just a switch of how you're doing it.
Yeah, everyone wants solutions, right?
Yeah, exactly. Everybody wants solutions. They just want to know, like, how do you get it done?
Yeah.
And I think that's great. So what does TNA have on the horizon for what big goals or plans do they have for the future?
I mean, just continue on refining what we're doing right now, right? I mean, with the evolving regulations and the need to kind of, you know, fine tune basically everything that we're doing. We're constantly looking at what we're doing and evaluating our performance. So, I mean, that takes up most of our time. I mean, obviously, really making sure that we maintain our market share within the Okanagan Valley. It is a big one. And, you know, constantly upgrading gear and getting into the newer technology will obviously make things more efficient, more cost effective. So it's continual innovation really is what we're focusing on.
Awesome. What about expansion? Do you guys plan on growing, you know, more equipment, more guys, or anything?
Yeah, I mean, in a certain way, we're kind of at a point here where it's not a matter of adding 1 or 2 machines. It's like you add 10, 15 guys and like 6 more machines, right? Okay. So it's quite a leap from where we're at right now. And I mean, Mike's kind of maintained this size of the company for quite some time, and it's the appropriate size for the valley. Yeah. Right. We can cover the whole valley and not get too stretched, you know, where we're, you know, really getting behind on other projects that we have lined up. Yeah. But I mean, I'd like to see another, you know, 5 or so employees jump on, experienced guys, and start getting more into shoring and that end of things as the market really picks up here with deep excavation. So that's kind of one thing I've taken on lately is developing a crew for that type of work.
That's awesome. Yeah. So do you kind of see what's happening in the bigger cities and then use that kind of to get your ideas, or, you know, what kind of machines or whatnot to plan with?
Yeah. And to kind of tie it back, you know, I was talking with Jared Wells from Western Grader, and he was in a very similar situation down in Victoria where they were doing, you know, stabilization, drilling and blasting for deep excavation, and the shoring just evolved there like crazy, and he adapted to the market. And, you know, like I said, I've spoken to him a few times about it, and now we're in that situation where there is a huge volume of shoring work, and there also still is a large volume of blasting work, so you might as well try and take advantage of it and get a local crew.
Yeah, they've done very well in Victoria. That's good to see.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So any comments or advice for young people wanting to get into this industry and take this on as a career?
Yeah. You know, I've told a number of people this. You know, when you get into this industry, try to become what I call a rock worker. Don't just try to aim to be a driller or just be a blaster or just be a scaler. You know, get thrown into a wide variety of roles and learn as much as you can from the senior guys. Ask questions, you know, and you'll evolve very quickly, because a guy who is a ticketed blaster, driller, scaler, and can do shoring is a very, very valuable employee. You can go wherever you want in the world and apply that skill. You're gonna make a very, very healthy income. And you're going to evolve. You're going to move up within a company very, very quickly. Not to say that, you know, guys that are just drillers or blasters or whatever, are, you know, lower rank, but you do limit yourself in opportunities, you know, very obviously. Yeah. So that's what I would say is try to do everything.
Yeah. Okay. That's great advice. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Sam. I appreciate it. It's been great. And thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah. Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah, you bet. And have a great day, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you would like to be a guest on a future episode and tell us your story, visit our website at www.rockbusters.com. If you have a project and would like to learn more about our products, or if you're interested in partnering with us and becoming a distributor, give us a call. Thanks again. We appreciate your support.